started because we have a pretty full agenda for today. So we have a few things I just wanted to mention. We mentioned it in the TOC meeting and in the governance working group meeting last week, but we do have 2 new tech leads for the tag, which is super exciting. So, and they're both on the call. So Ali is focusing on a lot of the work around the website and some of the Hugo Netlify stuff. Rian has been doing some great work with getting our roadmap and project boards and some other kind of GitHub related things wrangled into shape. So I just wanted to thank both of them for stepping up and filling some rather large shoes as we figure out what to do with the stuff that Carolyn had been doing so well for us in the past. So thank you, Ali and Rian.
It's a pleasure. I'll take the left shoe if Ali want to take the right shoe.
Okay. So we have a couple of things on the agenda. So we have Rob who is going to talk first about some of the centralized access control mechanisms for CNCF repos, and then we'll leave enough time after that to cover what look to be relatively extensive report outs from our various working groups. So with that, let me turn it over to Rob.
Sure. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna, if this is okay, share my screen on the desktop one. I'm just so basically the news is that for all of the questions about Sheriff, we have a plan to move away from using Sheriff to using a specifically commissioned for the CNCF tool called CloWarden, and that's developed by 2 developers in Spain, Sergio and Cynthia, and we together are working on rolling that out over the next couple of weeks. And we're undergoing a process right now of doing UAT. So to take a little step back, Sheriff is a tool that was forked from the Electron project, and Gephi forked that for our use to centralize giving access to maintainers and collaborators on community projects within the CNCF. And this ended up in a situation where a good situation where we centralized the granting of access to a file in CNCF people, and that file was config.yaml. And in config.yaml, we named repositories and we named teams, and we had the capability of specifying what GitHub profiles could access what repos. The team behind CloWarden have looked at that and has attempted to recreate that functionality, but in addition to consuming the config.yaml file, it's providing a lot more bells and whistles so that we can audit what has happened, and so that we can easily see what has happened when these centralized access permissions are applied to repos in the CNCF org. So what I have on the left-hand side here, or I'll just go full screen on this and I'll make it a little bit bigger. Let me know if you all can see that. And if you can't, please shout. This is the CloWarden web application that presents an audit view of how permissions have been applied to repos, and we can basically see here that CloWarden at the moment is targeting GitHub as a service, and this is what our current focus is, and this is what I'm going to talk about today, but remind me of services at the end of the talk, or ask me about that at the end. And here we see in this audit, we're looking at a sort of test org called CloWarden. And I think, yeah, this is the test org here. And we have one repository people, which mirrors our CNCF people. And this is what the developers have been using for testing. And we've started doing UAT now. So if you've ever looked at CNCF, people config.yaml, this will look familiar. Here we define teams, here we define repositories, and when we make changes to this file, the CLOWARDEN tool will apply the changes as described here to the repos in the org over which it's doing administration. So when that happens, then we can then review in the CLOWARDEN application. We then have this audit view of what has occurred, so that people in the community can see what has happened and review who has access to what. So just a quick look at this. This is basically a modern web app insofar as that we can filter this list here by team added, remove, maintainer added, etc., etc. And then we can also filter on repositories added and so on and so forth. Now, this has just been freshly developed. The current plan to roll this out and replace Sheriff with this is that Sergio and Cynthia have done a dry run of CLOWARDEN on the CNCF repo, and they've shared with us the list of changes that CLOWARDEN would make if it was run live. Myself, Chiefy, and other people within the CNCF will be looking at this to ensure that we're happy with the results. There may be some behavioral differences between Sheriff and CLOWARDEN, but we've already explored in meetings what they look like and what we expect them to be. And we're, for example, for tag contributor strategy, because in your settings.yaml you had commented out different sub-teams within this tag, I use feature of Sheriff to have a formation, which is basically a list of teams, which when you have a long list of people involved in a tag or a project, that is kind of a useful feature to basically break down roles within a tag or within a project. And Sergio, when we spoke about this yesterday, Sergio was able to modify the code to accommodate this feature because this was the first time, I think, for tag contributor strategy, this is the first time we had a coalesced group of teams have their perms applied to a single repo. So as we go through our deployment, we'll let you know what the timelines are. Post UAT, we'll announce to you when we're going to roll this out. We can kind of have Sheriff and CLOWARDEN run side by side, and that's something that we will manage that. A few other points that I have is that I've taken the feedback that you've emailed in and I've created an issue for that. I'll dig that out in a second. And we really welcome your interest and your feedback and all of your questions on this, because it's only by having community users of the tooling be happy with it that we'll all be happy, and it'll benefit the community as a whole. So I'll stop there and take any questions if anyone has any questions. I'll take a few now if you like.
So I went to the link for the CLOWARDEN IO, and it's just a holding page. Is there a link you can give us to the GitHub repo?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're actually private at the moment. I'll give them when they're shared, and this is behind a username and password as well. But it'll be coming in the next couple of days, Diane.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah.
So is this a CNCF infrastructure project, or is this just some of you guys are wonderful and you're doing an open source project on this?
No, it's sponsored and paid for by the CNCF. So from a CNCF point of view, but I think Amy's on the call, so Amy can speak to the need for it. But essentially, as an org, what we want to do is we want to have a single source of truth for who the maintainers are. Specifically here, which GitHub profiles have access to which GitHub resources. And that's important for a whole heap of reasons. But as part of the CNCF ethos and culture, a key thing here is that because we have this config.yaml file, and we're effectively using GitOps to manage changes to that file, and we have a Git-based audit view of that. But in addition to that, for people who don't want to be Git logging files and whatnot, this tooling here will make what happened when much easier to track. The only feature that I've requested here on this is we see here that there's a repository added on the sample repo. I've asked the team to link back to the PR so that you can go from this tool back to the PR that created that event.
Is there,
And
is there-
Noah, oh, sorry, Diane. Noah has his hand up. Do you want to chime in?
So my questions go in a completely different direction. So if there's more to this train of thought, then finish it.
Okay.
My questions are about granularity of permissions and things like that.
Okay, so we'll continue.
I did want to get one thing, because Robert started talking about what the timeline was for rollout, but then never actually gave us any times.
Yes.
So
I'll give definite times post UAT. So we're in a phase of UAT now, where the developers have shared, user acceptance testing.
Okay. So
we're going to go through a round of UAT so that as operators and maintainers of the service, we know exactly how it behaves, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's operator training as much as user acceptance testing. And when that's done, we'll make an announcement as to when we'll turn on Clo Warden and move towards turning off Sheriff. From the point of view of making the granular changes, and I'll go back to Noah if you have more detailed questions on granularity, because that's super important for us to communicate how that works. We're still working off the single config.yaml file for the moment. There are plans to directoryify this to make a directory pertain to a project or a tag, so that we're not changing a 10,000, 20,000 line YAML file when we want to make changes to this.
I was thinking more in terms of granularity of the permissions themselves. What I saw was read, write, admin. What about, people that have, for example, the other day I tried to assign myself an issue. Don't have permission to do that. At what level do you have to be to do these particular actions in order to work within a particular repo?
Okay, so that's a GitHub permissions question, and this is administering GitHub permissions. So it's a valid question to ask in this space, absolutely. The permissions that we have are read, write, maintain, and admin, and they map to GitHub permissions. Now, there has been confusion in the past on this, and Josh has asked some really good detailed questions on this. To go back to Sheriff, and the architectural design of Sheriff was to encompass granting access to resources as a more generalized tool, and Sheriff interacted with not only GitHub, but also tooling like Slack, and in the Electron project, G Suite as well, although we've not taken that on. But our plans down the line are to include services like Fossa, SNCC, and any other service that we can give out to the community in order to advance projects in their work. So I could refer you, Noah, onto GitHub perms, and what I would say to you is, instead of going to the settings YAML so within a GitHub repo, you can have a settings YAML file, I think in the GitHub directory, and you can specify permissions there. One of the minor challenges we have in this space is that when we centralize admin of perms for GitHub, we're working around the GitHub native way of specifying perms using settings.yaml. So one of the things that I want to get done is how to explain to people not to use settings YAML, rather than telling them, having an automated way of preventing them from doing that. But in terms of digging deeper, and I'll dig out links for you, we are looking at the GitHub docs for those perms.
Okay. Thank you.
Diane, you have your hand up.
All right. So maybe on the Insights tab, there might be something. Is there anything that can like if I have a point in time when I want to know who the maintainers were like 6 months ago, maybe they've changed. Is there any sort of reporting built into this to show who is on XYZ project on which team and who was a maintainer or had certain privileges? What's the reporting functionality look like at this point?
That's a really good question, because the audit log is not specifically built for that. But between config YAML, the underlying YAML file, and this audit tool, in a CSI kind of way, and I mean, crime scene investigation kind of way, we could technically extract that information by going through Git logs and so on and so forth. That's not exactly what you're looking for. A report will be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Or just, a graph or something that you could click on and say, okay, so this thing happened in 2014. These, and this maintainer is long gone, but they're still in your files somewhere. So that we could, know what the configuration of maintainers and contributors and privileges were at that point in time, would be helpful. I know this is brand new, so I'm just saying that's one thing I instantly wanted to be able to see if I could hack out of here. Because that's always, when changes happen, knowing who it was, and attrition and retention of maintainers kind of.
Yeah. Let me, I'll take that as a note to think about how we could implement that. And I might log an issue in the repo to take that. If you can tell me more about that user requirements, Diane, rather, in an issue that I log for it, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Is the issue logging still private too, though?
It is for today, but it will be public. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. When it's public, we can yak.
Josh.
Yeah, so a couple of follow-ups on this. So one is, specifically for the tag. So it sounds like for the permissions that we need immediately, I need to go ahead and file changes against the sheriff config YAML, because we're not transitioning to Clo Warden in like a week and a half. So the second thing that I actually did want to think about in terms of design of the tool is the ability to exempt specific repositories from the tool, something that Sheriff didn't have and was a problem. The reason being that we do have this the reason why I'm raising that concern is we do have this project called Community Infrastructure. Before we lost Carolyn, one of the things they were working on was replicating some PROW functionality entirely using GitHub permissions and actions. Our plan had been to test that by using it on the tag contributor strategy repo itself. Now that project is stalled right now, but if it resumes in the future, we could find ourselves in a position of saying, hey, we'd like you to take tag contributor strategy out of Clo Warden, for this period of time so that we can test the new community infrastructure stuff.
I'd be curious to know more about the project. That'd be the first thing. And absolutely, I would say, again, we log that as a feature request and we'll stick it in the backlog. I would imagine that having an ignore list should be implementable. But again, code required to write. But yeah, it's not rocket science. It's doable, implementable. Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting to almost the halfway point in the meeting. Do we have any, Rob, do you have any final thoughts, any last few things that you want us to know before we move on to the other agenda items?
In the next thing that you will get from me is we've passed through UAT and then an announcement of rollout. There's other things I could say about this, but we can talk again. I'll come back and talk more about it as we roll out and as we make improvements to this.
Cool, awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Rob, for coming into the meeting and for all of your hard work to help us wrangle.
But we have to give Sergio and Cynthia the shout out that they're the developers here. They did a great job on this. It's fantastic work. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So let's move into the working group report outs. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in mentoring. I'm going to ask you to maybe be concise
quick.
and
Sorry
report
about that.
out.
So LFX, just a report. We have term 1 completed as on. Term 2 is moving ahead. Everybody's working on, I think we've got 30 some odd. I'm not sure of the numbers for term 2 just off the top of my head, but term 1 was huge and I think very successful. 57 mentees in total. But again, trying to be concise, moving on, you can read the numbers yourselves. If you have any questions, let me know. So Google Summer of Code is well in progress at this point. Just a note, Rob, you're still sharing your screen, so you may not want to. There you go. Google Season of Docs is also in progress. We're hitting some of the payment timelines, and so I'm working with the LFX accounts payable team to folks to deal with that. Things are moving forward. I have some discussions of note that I'd like to invite all of you to chime in on. Meeting cadence, whether or not a specific project is a good fit for the mentoring working group, and a couple of conversations that came up at KubeCon around a mentoring shadow program or a buddy system that I think are connected, but we haven't had a whole lot of sort of discussion on the mentoring side of it. So I'd invite folks to discuss there. We're about halfway through the year, so I'm wondering if we should start considering revising or reviewing our goals. And this might be more of a mentoring WG discussion, but I thought I'd bring it up here as well. I don't know if we want to discuss that now or if I just want to sort of say, hey, this is something that we should do. I'll leave that to you, Dawn, if we want to have
I think a quick discussion about how we want to proceed on the goals would be good.
So right now, I think we're on pace to hit 150 mentees participating, given that we had such a strong first term. And we have already, I think, 15 or 16 Google Summer of Code participants. And I think we're at something like 30 or 35 projects for our next term. I can get that. Hold on just a second here. Sorry, 37 projects for term 2, which is a pretty good number. So we're already at around 100 projects, and we've still got a whole nother term of. We may not get to exactly 150, but I think we're on a pretty good pace. I think that our withdrawal failure rate is still quite high. And I'd like to discuss ways of mitigating that. We had 3 people fail out, or not fail out. We had 2 people fail out and 1 person withdraw, and we had 2 projects not start. So that's a total of 5 sort of. 5 out of 60. We're below our last year's rate of about 10%, but we're still above the 5% that I'd like to aim for. And I'd like to figure out how we might sort of solve that.
Do you know what other organizations of a similar size, what their rate is?
So I talked to some colleagues of mine who work at universities, and their goal is usually about 5% for a class.
Okay.
So it's not an exact one-to-one comparison, but that was sort of the closest thing that I was able to get some information on. So, and again, I think goals are aspirational. I think we it's not a failure to not reach them. It's okay. What did we learn from it? But at this point, what we've done hasn't reduced the rate, and so I think we need to do something different. And I'm not sure what that difference is. The other thing that we set as a goal is diversity of participants. And I'm not sure
hold
if we
on,
have a,
Nate. I'm going to interrupt you. I've been trying to take notes, and I'm really having trouble hearing you.
oh, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can.
Is it just me, or is it?
Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Well, I just,
Yeah.
sorry, I got a new air conditioning system, and it makes my apartment much more comfortable. But for meetings, my apologies. Do you want me to repeat anything?
You're
I
on
believe
mute.
you're muted.
Go ahead from where you were.
Okay, so another one of the, I think, major goals that we wanted to hit is increasing the number of projects participation, which I think we've done. I think 24 CNCF projects and 74 mentors representing those projects is a good number to start with. And I think I've got some ideas of how to further improve that. But another question that we wanted to improve as a working group is the diversity of participants. And I'm not sure that we've got a good definition of diversity given our global nature. So I don't want to ever sort of discourage a region, but we have several regions that are sort of our main areas. I think like a third or 2/3 of our participants come from 2 areas. I don't want to discourage that. What I want to do is encourage other regions. But again, I don't know. One of the things about goals is if they aren't measurable, they aren't achievable. And I'm not sure quite how to measure diversity in this context in a good way. So if I can put that in people's sort of brains to think on a little bit, that would be very, very helpful. So yeah. In addition, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. I've provided Don and Josh some data that I think we're going to be able to use to help us understand a little bit how mentees are following up their participation, whether or not they are continuing to contribute after their menteeship has finished. And I think that those that is going to sort of speak to the research that we need to do in order to help us understand our program sort of going forward.
And
so those are sort of the,
interrupt just a second. Josh, did you get that data from me? Because the data that we got out of LFX was incredibly unclean. I cleaned it up and gave you a data set that we can use for DevStats, which has GitHub IDs and when they completed the program. So if not, I can resend that to you. It came in when you were on PTO and or on a conference, and you're on mute. I see your lips moving.
Yeah, I haven't had time to dive into that. I actually need to ask you to have Lucas temporarily restore my data access. We don't leave that open.
Okay.
And we got down a rabbit hole of DevStats actually needs to migrate servers. So I got a little sidetracked on that.
Okay, but you've got the cleaned up data set, which is mainly what I wanted.
Yeah, you sent that to me in Slack, yeah?
Oh, possibly. I can send it to you somewhere else if that's easier.
I think it was in Slack. I remember.
Yeah, because the thing is that, through the DevStats UI, I can check whether or not they kept contributing to the same project that they mentored for. But we also want to know whether or not they might have contributed to any other project.
Yeah.
And the DevStats UI does not let you check that through the UI.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Another thing that I think we set as a goal but which I don't think we're going to match, and we may actually go the inverse, is increasing the number of programs that we participate in. We had set a goal that we want to add another program, but I'm not, but as is suggested in the discussions of note, I'm wondering actually if we should reduce the number of programs by one, at least temporarily. I think potentially that the Google Season of Docs, while it is a good program, is not a good fit for our mentoring endeavors. So I'm not sure that that's going to be a continued goal for us. And so,
Well, the other thing
yeah,
is
so
the one other program that you would participate in, rather than just saying increase the number of programs, is the one other program that we might have organized CNCF-wide participation in would be Outreachy,
right.
which would be good to do for other reasons, but that's always hinged on sort of additional volunteer recruitment.
That's well,
Since
that's part
Outreachy
of it
is
too.
much more hands-on than some of the other programs.
Yeah, and I think that we do have one CNCF program, rather project, engaged in Outreachy, and I believe that, I can't remember exactly how the funding model is, but I think we are involved. So I don't want to claim that as a win, but it's I agree we need to increase our. I would like to increase our exposure to Outreachy as well. So.
Let's try and just in the essence of time, let's try to wrap up the hearing.
Yeah. And I think that, yeah, if folks can check out those discussions of note, again, I'll revisit the goals in our next mentorship WG meeting. I think that's coming up next week. So folks are welcome to join. And I think that's it from mentorship, unless Jay or Ali have something to add that I've missed.
I'm okay at the stage, thanks. Cheers, Nick.
Okay, so let's move on, Rian, to contributor growth working group.
At the moment, I'm busy catching up on getting on top of what's going on in the working group. Carolina and I was just starting to get working on it, and so I'm busy reviewing all the goals and the scope of the project, and then I'm going to go find all the things that have been created out of that since the working group started, and determine what has been done, what needs to be done, create a to-do list and issues and so on. So just familiarizing myself at the moment.
Okay, cool, thank you. Anything else on contributor growth? Governance. So in the governance working group, we spent most of the working group talking about some of the governance review requests that we've had, and trying to catch up with those. We talked about Istio, Notary, and telepresence. So we're actively working on Istio and telepresence. We also gave another project, Flatcar, I think, some feedback, which they've implemented. And so now we need to do a review of that one as well. So that wasn't in the working group meeting. And then we covered a few other kind of bits and bobs, and we discussed the project board roadmap grooming before running into some permissions issues, which thank you, Rob, for fixing for us this week. So we should be able in the next governance working group be able to do a better scrub of the board for the governance working group. Anything else you want to add to that, Josh?
That's about it. Part of this in terms of the governance reviews is that we're actually working on a template.
Oh yeah.
And probably process document. I actually realized that I need to add some ideas around process and workflow, because we have a couple different workflow potentials depending on how it was requested, how the review was requested. So those need to be documented. So yeah, and that's what we've been doing lately. One of the other things I want to discuss is that we might take on doing the documentation for the contributor ladder template.
Hmm.
Since originally contributor growth was going to do that, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily expect that to happen anytime soon.
And we've done the rest of the templates anyways, so we can probably do that one
Yeah.
and be consistent about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions on governance? Okay, Dave, do you want to talk about maintainer circle?
Yeah, so we did the first virtual one at the end of last month, or my first virtual one rather. And I feel it went well overall, and thanks to Nate and Lee who did it, and to Rin because they did showed up to do support if necessary, and Josh who was also there to support it. I think the main thing with it was we just didn't get a lot of attendees, but the main bug that we discovered was that there was the Zoom link was to I think SIG contributor strategy instead of tag contributor strategy. So the Zoom link was wrong in the calendar invite. So one person who joined ended up finding the notes, like the notes went to the wrong header. So some process issues that it was the first one that I did. So so always improvements to be made. And so the next one is scheduled for June 28th. Just waiting on Paris to get me a bio, and I know that Paris is working on it. So that I should be able to promote that here pretty soon. And then I need to start soliciting topics for further ones. So I'll be doing that here probably today or tomorrow. I'll be getting that call out on Slack and other places. And that's my update. Yes, Nate, you're muted.
I was going to make a comment and I realized that maybe it's not the correct thing to say, but one thing that I found in terms of one of the best sources I have for getting people to the CNCF mentoring repo is LinkedIn. So it may not be an appropriate spot for you if you're targeting specifically maintainers, but it's by a fairly wide margin the best driver for mentoring stuff. So I don't take that for what it's worth.
Sure. Yeah. I think, I mean, yeah, I think one of the issues is this very specific audience we're trying to target for attending. But I mean, I think there might be ways to leverage, like, I'm looking for any way to leverage reaching those people. Because I know not everyone, looks regularly in the Dash Dev channels and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a good idea.
When you have a blurb and a date, ping me and I can add the maintainer circle stuff to the maintainer newsletter as well.
Awesome.
Like
Cool.
about
Thanks.
monthly usually. Yeah.
Okay, any last questions on the maintainer circle?
Yeah. The one other idea I would throw out there is when Paris was running these originally, she did a number that were about, sort of life balance and other difficulties of being a maintainer that were actually fairly popular. So you might want to think about throwing one of those in the mix if you can get, obviously a person for it, which is the challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
Okay, next up on the agenda is the visual for the tag contributor strategy README, which had some discussion in Slack. The thing that pops out to me is we have this inclusiveness initiative that never really got much traction. So I'm wondering if we should put it on the visual. I don't know, Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's actually two things, and I just haven't had a time to comment on the Slack thread. So, one is if inclusiveness is in there, which I kind of like to be in there because, like, we put it in our directory structure a couple of times because, like, twice we've had a group of people come say they're interested in working on, inclusiveness stuff CNCF wide. We said, great, here's your directory, here's everything else. Let us know if you need to have a meeting, if you need Zoom, anything else. And then they get busy with other things. Because it's officially a sort of tentative initiative, I would tend to like to put it in there with, like, I don't know, dotted lines or something else to indicate that it's not currently staffed. Because like if somebody wanted to lead it right now, you know, we would restart it again. It's a clear need and clearly sort of under the tag. One of the comments I was going to make is, out of those initiatives, GitHub management is kind of internal, if you follow me. That's like our GitHub management, rather than GitHub management for projects, which is more the community infrastructure initiative. So I wouldn't actually include that in the diagram for that reason. Like, it's something we need to do in the same way that website management is. But the rest of this picture is all output, basically, is all things that we are doing with the projects, or theoretically doing with the projects. I mean, actually, the community infrastructure initiative would also be dotted line at this point, because we don't have anybody on it right now except Hippie, and it's not his main focus.
As a counterpoint to GitHub management, coming off the diagram, would the work that we do in building up frameworks, building up things like the stuff that Rob's working on, is that something that, while it's not directly the management itself, it's providing for other people to do the management, would that qualify that to stay on the diagram?
Well, that would be part of community infrastructure. I mean, most of what's been proposed for community infrastructure is GitHub stuff.
Okay. I do notice all three of the initiatives say proposed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess maybe it would just sort of be a better thing to kind of indicate. Indicate that the initiatives are currently looking for contributors. I don't know. Whether not on this diagram, but, you know, like, you know, have a call out, have another slide, something else. I don't know, figure that out.
The GitHub management actually is only a file at the moment on the top level. So we could easily take that off and I can see how what you say, Josh, that it's actually our internal GitHub management. So I'm all good if we take that off. Community infrastructure is actually at the moment in the README under contributor growth. So it's kind of hidden in there as well. So we can also easy to take that off. And then I fully agree that inclusiveness should be kind of like if you want to pick this up, it's not staffed at the moment. And when we get somebody coming back asking about it again, to say, yes, here it is, just start working.
I almost wonder if we should just maybe simplify this a bit and take the initiatives off of the graphic, because I feel like our focus has been on the working groups. And like you said, I mean, some of the stuff like the community infrastructure stuff actually has happened under the contributor growth working group. And I think even the inclusiveness was also kind of under the contributor growth working group itself. So I'm generally in favor of simplifying where we can. So that would be my preference. I don't know if other people agree with that or not.
It's fine. I might feel differently if you know, like both of those initiatives were active.
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent I feel like we do want to advertise this somewhere, but I mean, part of it, we're in a situation right now where we're trying to recruit people to contributor growth. because it's the activity there has fallen off.
Mhm.
And both of those initiatives are more closely tied to contributor growth than they are to other things. Well, community infrastructure is kind of its own thing.
I think part of why that one was under contributor growth was because Carolyn had a particular passion for that area. And so it kind of made sense to do the two at the same time.
I think as a corollary to your comment, Dawn, we've got these 3 initiatives listed here, but how many other initiatives do we have that have just been backburnered? And how many other projects like that people have brought up that just don't end up getting worked on because we don't have the human power? And would we list those as well? I think would be a good line in the sand for whether or not these should be on the diagram.
Well, we're losing people from the meeting. I think we've had a lot of discussion about this. I feel like maybe I need to think about this a little bit more. I don't know if anybody else kind of feels that way, but maybe maybe we can come back to the discussion in Slack and maybe have a bit more discussion about where to take this. I also don't want to overthink it. Like if we put something on the README now, we can always change it later. You know, it's not like this is permanent forever, what we must have as a graphic. So in the spirit of something is better than nothing, maybe we go with something like this. Maybe we get something out there, and then if we decide we really need to make some improvements later, we make those. Okay, I'm gonna say that we, sorry, hay fever. I'm gonna say that we punt it to Slack, and then try to get something up on the README maybe in the next week or so. Let's not kind of wait around for the perfect. Now getting the word out, weekly tweet / social. Is there stuff that we really want to promote? And if so, thoughts on where we want to promote things?
Okay, so it sounds like we'll be promoting the next maintainer circle next week. So given this,
Okay, so I'll put for next week that we'll promote the maintainer circle. I think that's probably.
yeah, I was thinking about what for this week.
Oh, I was just
when
thinking this
is-
week's basically over, so I was thinking about sort of.
Oh yeah, no, but I just mean, the do we have a meeting next week?
No, it's unless there's a mentoring.
Or off week?
Yeah, but it's the off week for Thursday because it's the
Okay.
Kubernetes meeting.
Okay, I don't have anything else at the moment.
There is a mentoring next Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be anything to promote out of that, but we should definitely promote the maintainer circle. Okay, in our remaining 6 minutes, is there anything left that we need to talk about with the few people that we have left who haven't dropped for other meetings?
Let's talk about meeting attrition.
These people think they need to make coffee and take a bathroom break between meetings. I don't know how that works.
The actually, if we had to be facilitated, that would be a fun maintainer circle topic. Managing project meetings.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
The
And how many can happen on Wednesday and Thursday between 9 and 11 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah.
Yep.
All of them at the
Yes.
same time
All of
slot.
them.
I particularly enjoy the number of CNCF initiative meetings that happen in the time slot that the TOC meeting it happens.
Yeah.
I don't even have the CNCF calendar on my calendar, and I'm still quadruple booked in some slots with just Kubernetes meetings.
Mhm.
It's a lot of meetings for sure. Okay, well, I think we're winding down. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you around Slack and email. Bye.
Good one.
See you.
Yes.